Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
All right, Deacon, we are back. And when we left off, we were talking about families being torn apart. And one of the things that I see a lot is, and hear a lot, and it's heartbreaking, is that parents are so afraid that they're not going to see their grandchildren because of the relationship with their children.
Yeah. No, it's difficult. It's very difficult. I've had this conversation with many people. You know, there's the attitude of, well, you know, if I say something, I'm never going to see the grandkids. Or if I say something, it's going to result in a big fight. If I say something, this or that, you know, again, it goes back to what is your responsibility? And so for the parents, you know, for parents out there who are, or, you know, the grandparents that are dealing with this, it's delicate. So God gives the authority within the house to the head of the family, the husband. And so, you know, Dave, you, myself, as the heads of our family, we have authority over our house. But that authority that we have over our house, it comes with terms. It comes with terms. And some of the terms that it comes with is when our children grow to an age where they leave our house and they establish their own house, our authority becomes modified. So what do I mean by that? So I have 8 children. And of my 8 children, I have 2 girls and I have 6 boys. And so as my 6 sons establish their own homes, they have authority over their house. Now, if they are doing something that's disordered within their house, what is my responsibility? And this goes right towards what you're talking about, because you see this a lot. Just the way that it is. You know, you have the grandmas that want to be the peacemakers, the grandmas that just, you know, they want to see the babies. And so they don't want to get into a fuss and an argument about this one or that one. They're afraid that, you know, if they say anything, then you know, they'll lose access to the grandkids. We see this play out quite a bit. So as the head of the family, as the father, I have authority over my house. My boys grow up, they move out, they establish their own houses. They now have authority over their house. What then becomes with my authority? Well, I still have authority over my sons, but the terms are different. The authority now that I possess is an authority of wisdom, mentoring, guidance, not the authority of doing. The authority of doing is still theirs because it's their house. I would have an obligation out of love to be able to express to my sons, you know, in my experience, son, what you're doing is leading you in a direction that's not going to end well. And I've had those conversations with my boys. I've absolutely had those conversations with my boys. And, you know, there have been occasions where they've changed direction because of some of the conversations and the things that we've spoken about. And there have been other instances where they did not change direction. And, you know, come to find out that they're just as hard-headed as their father, me, then they had to learn for themselves. And then the light bulb goes on. It's like, you know, Dad, yeah, I really should have listened to you about that. But I guess I just had to learn it myself. Again, we do have authority, but the terms are different. Likewise, as mothers, they have authority over their children, but once their children are grown, the terms change. So does this mean that grandma should just be quiet and not say anything about the fact that the kids are living together and they're not married, and then there's grandkids, and what do you do with that? I would say the answer is you love them. You love them and you let them know that it would be preferred by the church, it would be preferred by you, it would be preferred by Jesus, that they reconcile and enter into a proper state of matrimony, just to use that as an example. But the idea of promoting a concept where I'm okay with you living forever outside of sacramental matrimony, that is a problem, because now you're promoting a notion that is sinful in nature. But again, it's, you know, Once the kids are adults, they've moved out, then they have to be responsible for the decisions that they make. We are responsible as the wisdom and the mentors and the pastoral love that we extend to them. It is not loving to perpetrate a lie. Perpetrating a lie is not loving. Loving is being truthful combined with forgiveness and mercy, where you could say, that I'm not fond of the living arrangement that you're in. And I pray for you every day that you'll come back to the church and reconcile this relationship. But until then, I'm going to love you. And I'm just going to ask that, that you don't place me in an awkward situation where I am becoming vividly a witness to something that is clearly opposed to Catholic doctrine. And you can say that in a very loving pastoral way. Will it be accepted? I don't know. I don't know if it'll be accepted. Again, you go back to scripture where, Jesus speaks about how, a house will be divided because of the gospel message, because you're living in truth. There will be a division within the house. It's going to happen. Blessed are those who are persecuted, for the sake of righteousness. We just have to recognize that part of this, we're not living this life for ourselves. And I think that's part of the problem also. And that's one of the reasons why people are afraid of rejection. People are afraid of rejection because, well, what is being rejected? I mean, if this whole thing is my idea, if this whole thing is all about me, well, then maybe I guess I'm the one being rejected. But what if it's not? What if everything that I'm doing through prayer, and everything that I'm doing through solid doctrinal understanding, and you still reject it? Well, are you rejecting me, or are you rejecting the church? Are you rejecting Christ and his mandate to go forth into the world, teach all that I've commanded, baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Spirit? We have to, it's important to figure out exactly what is being rejected.
Deacon, you just brought up a very, very important word, baptism. So many times there are grandparents that want to get their grandbabies baptized, but the parents don't want to do that. They want to maybe wait to see what religion the child wants to. What's the church's teaching on that specific dance?
Yeah, so for some of you will remember there was an episode of All in the Family where Meathead, who is an atheist, and Gloria, Archie's daughter, they had a child. And Archie wanted the baby to be baptized, and Meathead's like, it's not necessary. This is ridiculous. This is just hocus pocus stuff and all this going on and on and on. And Archie brought the baby to the church. And I think, if I remember correctly, in secret, I think he baptized the baby at the baptismal font. Okay, that was a TV show. And actually, I have known people to argue the position, well, anyone can baptize in an emergency. Okay, well, when you find yourself in an airplane that's going down and someone cries out to you, can someone please baptize me? Then go for it. Have at it. You can baptize. Or if you're a nurse, or if you're a medical professional and you're witness to a birth and the baby is in the process of dying, and the mother cries out, quickly, someone baptize my baby before the baby dies, then have at it. Go for it. But we're not talking about the extraordinary. We're talking about the ordinary. And in the ordinary sense of things, because I've actually encountered this, in the ordinary sense of things, you must have the legal parent or guardian approve of the baptism. Must. And the reason why, forget about the local laws, but anyone that has participated in the sacrament of baptism, if you listen to the ritual itself, the whole ritual, you can boil it down to 3 pieces. The entire ritual you can boil down to 3 pieces. The first piece is the family is presenting the person to be baptized to the church, asking the church to baptize this person. That's the first piece. Why is that important? Because what follows that is the minister of baptism is going to put the family on notice that you have an obligation to raise this person up in the teachings of the church. So there's a back and forth dialogue in this first piece. This first piece is this back and forth dialogue where there's a promise being made. I want my baby to be baptized. I'm asking the church to baptize my baby. And the church will say back to the parents and godparents, okay, fine, I'll baptize your baby, but you are making a promise that you're going to raise the child in the teachings of the church, not the teachings of the world, because we know the world is ruled by Satan, by sin. So that's the first major chunk. Then the second major chunk is the actual sacrament itself, the pouring of the water over the child. Usually it's the child's head, pouring the water over the child's head. I mean, I say usually, you can do a full immersion where you're dunking the child in the water, or the person, the adult, whoever it is. You could do a full immersion, but it's 3 times, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So it's 3 times. It's not once. It's not 4. It's not sprinkling with holy water. It's not scooping up some holy water in your hand and making the sign of the cross on the person's forehead. It's pouring the water over the person 3 times, or dunking the person 3 times. So that's the second part. That's the actual outward sign of the inward reality of the sacrament of baptism. And so you're doing that in view of the church. We have to remember all the sacraments of the church, they're all public sacraments. They all impact the church body itself. And so this is meant to be done in view of the public. And then the third part is setting up the child for the next sacrament, which actually is confirmation. You're setting things up for the next sacrament. And so these are the 3 major pieces to the sacrament of baptism. The idea of a parent not wanting to have their child baptized, that's very significant, very, very significant. And I know a lot of families, they struggle with this. What am I supposed to do? The kid's not baptized. Well, number one, do the parents actually understand and do they believe in the teachings of Christianity? Do they believe that there is a devil? Do they believe that evil does exist? And by baptizing their child, they are in effect drawing the child under the protection of God himself. An indelible mark, a stamp, a seal, an imprint is placed on the eternal soul, and God is saying, this one's mine. One of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is that, yes, Jesus says, let the children come to me and do not prevent them. But when we're born into the world, we are not born immediately under the protection of God. We are vulnerable. And this is why baptism is so important. Baptism for a newborn child is a gift. It's a gift from the family. Basically, the family is saying, I want you to be protected by, the triune God. I want you to be under the umbrella of protection. And so that's the big part of baptism is now we're adopted into the family of God. And so I wonder when families argue back and forth about whether or not baptism is important, or this is my favorite, right? Well, we're going to wait until our child is old enough to decide for themselves what religion they're going to be. It's like, okay, well, I hate to say it, but that's like one of the dumbest things to say about a child. That's one of the most foolish things to say. That would be the same thing, and I think I've said this before, that would be the same thing as saying, well, my wife and I, we had a baby, but we're not going to name it. We're going to wait until our child is old enough to decide whether or not they want to actually be part of our family. So we're just going to let the child be, free range parenting, just leave him over there and let him watch. Let him look at other families. Maybe he'll decide he wants to be over there with that family. And we're just going to free range our kids, let them out there, wander around until our child is old enough to make the decision for themselves. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard people argue. I'm going to wait until my child is old enough to decide what religion they want to be. Really? How knowledgeable are you about the various different religions where you can choose the difference between this one or that one or that? It's really a foolish position to take, because you leave who I assume is your pride and joy. I assume the child is the love of your life. You leave them vulnerable. You absolutely leave them vulnerable. We read in the scriptures, that one of the things that God really hates is lukewarmness. It's like either be hot or cold. But lukewarm, I vomit you out of my mouth. It's like, make a decision, man. Make a decision. You want to be Jewish? Fine. Be a really, really great, knowledgeable, devoted Jew. You want to be a Hare Krishna? I don't know why, but maybe you do. Then you know what? Be all in. Make a decision, man. I tell you, it's very, very important. It's very important. And those of us who are Catholic, we absolutely know this is the real deal. And so when it comes to baptizing our children, we have to remember, number one, you're coming to the church because you're recognizing that the church has something you and your child need. And what goes hand in hand with that is your commitment that you're going to raise the child according to not your idea of what is right and wrong, but you're going to raise your child based upon what God decides is right and wrong. And this is important. And it goes back to, I know we're talking about rejection, and I'm probably going to have a little bit of, I'm probably have some emails that come in my way as people going, oh, but Deacon, you don't understand. Really? Yeah, I do understand. I've been in that situation with family members who have said, hey, I want you to come baptize my child. I was like, wait a second. Have you been to church at all this past year? No? Okay. We need to focus on you first. We need to focus on you. We need to focus on the child's parents. We need to focus on the teachings of the church. See, one of the things that we have to remember is God's not a fool. Jesus is not a fool. Anyone that comes to the church with this attitude of just, I'm going to get my ticket punched. I'm going to show up, do my time, and I'll get my ticket punched and I'm going to go straight to heaven. Meanwhile, I'm not going to live it. I'm not going to incorporate this into my life. Let's not forget, Jesus has also said in the scriptures, I do not know you. You may come to me and say, but we ate together, drank together, I prophesied in your name. Yeah, but I don't know you. I don't know you. And that's what's really important. Does Jesus know you? Or are you just trying to get your ticket punched? Are you making it all about you? And this is why rejection, and we feel it. We feel rejection because, hey, man, I'm not the kind of person that cares about getting my ticket punched. I really don't. I really don't. How do we get to know somebody? We've talked about this in the past also. You go back to when we were all in high school. I mean, Dave, do you remember talking to some girl on the phone for like an hour or 2 hours and absolutely talking about nothing? But yet you're hanging out. You're spending time.
That wasn't my high school experience, but it definitely was with my wife.
Yeah, I mean, you're spending hours talking about nothing. But how do you get to know somebody? I mean, my wife and I, both of us we met in we started dating when we were both in the volunteer fire department in Long Island, New York. And we would just spend hours together talking about nothing. I mean, silly things, How's the pizza? I mean, just dopey things. But we got to know each other by spending time together. And it's the same thing with Jesus. How are you supposed to get to know him if you don't spend time with him? Why would you expect him to come to have your back and come to your aid if you don't spend time with him? Dave, just over the Father Day weekend, we just had scriptures where Jesus is sending out the disciples to go to do missionary work. He's sending them out. And the gospel opens up with Jesus saying, fear no one. That's how the gospel opens up. Fear no one. And he's talking about, you're going to be persecuted. I'm sending you to places. You're going to go places where people are going to be throwing rocks at you. And then Jesus goes on to say, are not 2 sparrows sold for a small coin, but yet not one of them falls to the ground without your Father knowing it. Even all the hairs on your head are counted. God is watching everything, everything. And he's watching how you behave in the moment. And at the end of that gospel, Jesus gives a warning, a very powerful warning. He says, if you declare that you know me to others, I will know you before the Father. But if you deny me before others, I will deny you before the Father. What does that mean? What does that mean if he's not saying, listen, you're going out into the world and you're going to bring a message, you're going to live a life that they don't want. Some of them, you'll convert some, but you're also going to come across other individuals who do not want to hear what you're saying. They're going to find what you're saying as a threat to how they are living their evil life. And some of you are going to be killed for it. I mean, that's really the message. Not a sparrow falls to the ground without the Father knowing it. And who these disciples are, they're little sparrows going out into the world. Same thing is true for us. We're going to face rejection. What does that mean? So we get rejected, right? I mean, Dave, you and I have experienced rejection more than once working together for the radio program, where we've spoken to people, we tried to get some cooperation in different radio stations, we tried to partner, and we've experienced rejection. We've also experienced success.
Yes.
I mean, recently we were thinking, there was a technological glitch in what we were doing, and we're thinking, did we lose a radio station? Come to find out, no, it was just a technological glitch. Mm-hmm. Rejection happens. But then also, when we have faith and we trust, then we recognize that I'm not in charge anyway. God's in charge. And if we look at everything through the lens of, I'm going to let Jesus be ultimately in charge of everything, well, then, is it really rejection? Or maybe it's Jesus's way of saying, that wasn't exactly what I wanted for you. I mean, Dave, you and I, we've talked about all kinds of beautiful thoughts and dreams that we had about, we wanted to expand the show and, go to Ireland and do all kinds of wild things. And, some of those conversations worked out, right? I mean, we're coast to coast now, right? We have a station that we're playing on over on the West Coast, and we got a bunch on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. Our program has grown, but we also tried to partner in places where it didn't go anywhere. It's like, all right, well, I guess that wasn't meant to be for now. No. But when we're in relationship with Jesus, it's all on his terms.
Deacon, I think a lot of our problems, our youth today, is they do feel rejected. And I don't see how they feel that, but sadly, it's a common thing. There is so much rejection in the world.
But again, we come back to this notion. Yes, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of young people that feel rejected, and as a result of feeling rejected, they feel defeated. But the bigger question that we have to ask is, what were they pursuing? And why were they pursuing that? And what was being asked of them that they would have to sacrifice along the way in that pursuit? Jesus gives a very clear promise to all of us. Jesus makes it abundantly clear, if you surrender yourself to me, I will take you to paradise. Now, in some regards, he may be speaking about here on earth, comfort, prosperity, so that we can become pastors of the fruits that have been given to us and share that with the world. In other regards, should we say that the martyrs of the church were failures? Because that's one of the things that I come back to. And this is something that everybody should really think about. Ask yourself the question. Don't allow yourself to escape this. Were the martyrs of the church failures? Now, if you say they were failures, well, then your belief that what we're actually pursuing is eternal happiness with God. If you're saying that the martyrs of the church were failures because they died, hey, pal, think about this. We're all going to die. Every one of us. Nobody gets out of this alive. We're all going to die. But the question is, how do we live? Recently, I was reading about St. Damien of Malachi. His story, it just grabs hold of me. Those of you that don't know it, very, very simply put. A long time ago, one of the islands of Hawaii was established as a leper colony. Man, if you went there, you're going to live and you're going to die there. You're never leaving that island. And St. Damien of Malachi, St. Damien, Father Damien, priest, he was given the opportunity to voluntarily go to the island so that he could bring the Eucharist to the people. Because prior to him, the closest that they ever got to church was, a boat would be yards off the shore with, mass being celebrated through a megaphone or something like that, yelling to the island, and people would gather on the shore. But if the wind switched directions, they're out of there. So Father Damien, he voluntarily agreed and he went to the island, knowing that he was going to contract leprosy and he was going to die from leprosy. He knew that once he stepped on that shore, he would never leave again. But nevertheless, he did that. He did that because this was the calling that God made for him, to bring the truth, to bring the Eucharist to these people. Another example, Maximilian Kolbe, Father Maximilian Kolbe I think was it Auschwitz? I think it was Auschwitz that he was in.
Yep.
Yeah, so Father Maximilian Kolbe, a Catholic priest in the concentration camp of Auschwitz during World War II, and they were going through the selection process to see who's going into the gas chamber next. And Maximilian Kolbe stepped up and he said, this man over here that you just selected, I know that he's a father. He's a father, he has children. Let me take his place. And so he took his place. Did Maximilian Kolbe, did he fail? Was his life a failure because he was martyred? And then we can go on and on and on throughout history. We can go on and on throughout history of all those who have died for Christ. Are they all failures? Are they failures? I would say no, they're not failures. Once you realize that we are called to live our life not for ourselves, but to live our life for Christ, and we let him lead the way, he will give us everything that we need so that we could live to the fullest the life that God chose us to live. It would be crazy to think that every one of us are supposed to be billionaires like, Trump or somebody. That's insane for us to think that. And as hard as it may be, yes, some of us are called to live in a cardboard box under a bridge. I mean, that's just the reality. Some of us are called to do that and to witness to the poor or whatever. I don't know. But we have to recognize that rejection is only rejection when we put it through the lens of what I want, what I am pursuing, what I am asking for, as opposed to what Mother Angelica, her attitude before she established EWTN, her attitude was real simple. I'm going to keep going down this path until I can't go anymore, and that's when I'll know God wants me to switch directions. So we have a new email address, and I just want to mention this. For those of you that are interested in sending us, your thoughts on the show or topics you'd like us to cover, prayer requests, what have you, if you want to just say hi, send us an email at throughthefire392@gmail.com. Through the Fire, all one word. Through the Fire 392, all together. Through the Fire 392@gmail.com. It's our new email address. And, send us your show ideas, send us your prayers, send us your blessings upon us. Pray for us because we definitely need that, and we'll keep praying for you. So it's Through the Fire 392@gmail.com.
Deacon, that's all we got time for this week. So until next week, I'm David Fortin, Deacon Don Prendergast. Have a blessed week.
The preceding program was the Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.